Good evening. My name is Tammy O'Callahan. I want to talk to you for just a few minutes about the legacy of Thomas Jefferson. If a man's legacy rests in the amount of memorials dedicated to his name, then Thomas Jefferson comes out looking pretty good. According to a Wikipedia page on the subject, he has 4 high schools, 9 elementary schools, 3 universities or colleges, not counting the University of Virginia, multiple streets, cities, counties, buildings, parks, a mountain, and even a monument dedicated to him and to his name. He has his historic home, Monticello, has about 440,000 visitors a year, according to the website for Monticello, and his face is one of only 4 that graces Mount Rushmore. Jefferson was concerned that people who came after him have the opportunity to read his words in primary source documents. He understood the value of that, and he believed that if they had that, that would be key to understanding how he thought and his work. In pursuit of that, he was careful to leave a lot of his writing for posterity. Ironically, he has not always been interpreted as he may have thought he would be, but more on that later. Historian Francis Cogliano has a great deal to say about Jefferson's legacy. In one of his quotes, he says, quote, "He believed that his reputation and the success of the nation's experiment with Republican government were intimately linked." In other words, and that was the end of the quote, in other words, Jefferson felt so strongly that his personal life and reputation were tied to the life of the Republic he had helped to form, that he was sure that preserving his words and work would help preserve the Republican form of government and possibly even spread it to other nations. In pursuit of that, he asked his younger friend, James Madison, to be a safeguard or a protector of his reputation after he died. Jefferson had an idea of what he wanted his legacy to be, and he had it engraved on his gravestone. Author of Declaration of American Independence and of the Statute of Virginia for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. He felt that these 3 achievements best summed up his life's work. But is that how his legacy is carried forth to today? Until about 1960, Jefferson was revered and held in high esteem by freedom-loving, proud countrymen of his in America. What changed since then? Because it's not that way today. Cogliano believes that Jefferson is a type of national mirror. I thought this idea was so interesting for the United States. When its citizens love who they are and what they represent, they love Jefferson. When they look at what they are and they don't like what they see, they disparage him. When the civil rights movement exploded in the 1960s, the nation took another look at Jefferson, and instead of the father of liberty, they saw a terrible racist who spoke about men being created equal on the one hand, and yet on the other hand owned slaves and thought blacks incapable of intellectual and artistic pursuits on par with whites. He was continually pointing this out in his correspondence, even in later life. It wasn't something that he reconciled himself to or came to embrace a broader view of, even as he got older. Men like Benjamin Banneker, a black man who created an atlas, and Henri Gregoire, a French priest, sent him evidence trying to convince him, this man of reason that he was known to be, that blacks were equally capable with whites on intellectual and artistic pursuits, but he refused to even acknowledge that that could be so. The worst of Jefferson's detractors have even accused him of being the father of modern terrorism. Cogliano, in his article that I referenced earlier, talked about Connor Cruz O'Brien, an Irish historian, and here's what he had to say about him. He, quote, condemned him as a racist who advocated violent terrorism in opposition to the federal government. This is a continuation of the quote. O'Brien saw Jefferson as the inspiration for the militia movement in the mid-1990s, including Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber. This is a radical view and not widely held, but it could not be further from the legacy that Thomas Jefferson preferred for himself. While Jefferson may not always be considered in the way he wished, the fact is he is continually being considered. Whether he is in fashion or out of fashion, Peter Onuff contends, and that's another historian, that, quote, the impulse to unmask Jefferson, to make sense out of his complex career, is a mark of his continuing significance in our public culture. So whether we're talking about him in ways that are good or bad, we're still talking about him. In his article, The Sage at Sunset, historian Edwin Yoder spoke of the legacy he found through the biographical work of Dumas Malone. He says that, quote, excellence in life and statecraft, in art and intellect was Jefferson's legacy to the nation. So whether he's good or bad, what we can agree on is that he is a man of interest and worth studying. Thank you.